Infill housing within inner suburbs is a way of using land more efficiently, and smaller parcels of premium real estate become more accessible for those who want to live near the city. At ground level, infill development isn't an easy thing to get right. For example, loss of garden space and tree canopy is a very contentious issue. New buildings should respond to the surrounding suburban character. And of course, new homes should be climate responsive and nice to live in. And this is where good design of both house and garden becomes absolutely critical. Hey Jimmy.
Hey,
How you doing? Good. For architect Jimmy Thompson, these considerations were front of mind when designing his own home at the rear of a subdivided block in the inner city suburb of North Perth. You've created an incredible home, Jimmy. The first thing that strikes me is the blurring of the lines between the landscape and the building.
I guess from a philosophical point of view in terms of design and living in Australia, I think it's just so important that we don't distinguish between architecture and then landscape. Really, they need to be enmeshed. And I guess that's what attracted me about this site so much, was that I could borrow the adjacent landscape and spill out, you know. And that's the nice thing about having a courtyard house in a way, is the walls provide the security, so you don't need boundary fencing. So your gardens can just continue on, and that boundary then really starts to blur. So within the house, there are 3 different types of gardens. Around the perimeter are all the edible plants. So you have a whole series of fruit trees, but then you also have this beautiful Mediterranean kitchen meadow that just wraps around and spills out into the park. Within the centre of the courtyard, that's a medicinal garden is what we'd call it. So there's a whole range of plants here which we use to make teas and tinctures, which can treat a wide range of ailments. And on the rooftop are a series of West Australian endemic plants, you know, wildflowers, grasses, a whole range that can really support urban habitat.
What size is the property, and what's the ratio between the garden area and the built area?
The lot size is 256 square metres, so 15 metres by 17 metres. So essentially it was an ex-backyard. And for us, you know, as designers and architects, it's important that when you're doing infill that we do it responsibly. And for me, that means replacing what was formerly a backyard with the equivalent area in gardens and courtyards. For us to do that here, we had to do that on multiple levels, including the roof gardens.
How long have you been living here?
So we've been here 2 years now. So that's me, Angie, and our 2 cats. So upstairs here on the first floor are all our living areas. The great thing about it here is that it's a single deck space. We've got a whole lot of exposure to north, so we can get beautiful winter sun in, but we've got these screens which can cut out the summer sun. So the idea about the house is really operable, almost like a yacht. Different times of the year, different times of the day, you're always pulling, opening, making the most of getting southwesterly wind coming through this aperture, blowing straight through, opening up, flushing out hot air when you need to. For comfort around climate, you need to have a choice.
So this really feels like a climate responsive design that's more akin to like a Mediterranean or a North African building type more than you normally see for a Perth home. What's the sort of the inspiration there?
Yeah, well, you're spot on, because, you know, one of the first things that I thought about designing this house was the work of Marshall Clifton and Julius Elisher, who worked early in mid-20th century in WA, and they were looking at different vernacular architectures for Perth, ones which could be climate responsive. And so they went straight to the Mediterranean, North African courtyard houses, whitewashed walls, and that's where we kind of bring in some of the exoticism of the glazed blue bricks as well. So these things have a cultural reference, but also a climate reference as well.
Roof gardens on residential buildings is not something we see a great deal of in Perth. What made you do it here?
You're absolutely right, Josh, and it's a real shame because they provide so many benefits. You know, not only is it great insulation to help keep your house cool in summer and warm in winter, but it's also what you view over. You imagine if I had colour-bond roof here and we were sitting on the terrace, it'd be providing glare, you know, it's just an unsightly thing. So instead you can have beautiful native plants. These plants can attract birds, they can look after insects as well. It's just a much better outcome.
How deep's the soil and how often do you water?
So the soil depth ranges from about 150 mils down to about 350 mils. For 9-10 months of the year, we don't water at all now.
So from bird's eye view, your whole property really is like a sponge, isn't it? So the roofs have gardens and the courtyards are all permeable, so it must manage stormwater, even in those peak rainfall events, very well.
That's exactly right. So all that water is feeding the green roofs, then draining into downpipes which are embedded in the brick walls, and then that's going down into the courtyard into a bigger drainage cell, which then essentially penetrates groundwater. So building small but building smart is good for the environment, it's good for your hip pocket, but it also just makes sense.
I love what's been achieved here. Not only is it a beautiful home, but it connects so well with its surrounding area. And the building and the landscape actually give back to the street. A common criticism of infill housing is that the household can become disconnected from the neighbourhood. With this house, it's exactly the opposite.
When you have a bespoke, tailored design that fits your lifestyle, it really makes me want to spend more time at home, to work less, to hang out with Angie and the cats. It's really changed my perspective on life.